benefiting from the professional connections of your parents. So you must be the idle one, right? No. Children too. Why did he release my child from your judgments? How did someone like you manage to enter into a marriage? What underhanded tactics did you employ? My mother-in-law and sister-in-law never warmed up to me, consistently tossing sarcastic comments my way and spreading baseless rumors about me. It was undeniably draining. I'm Karen Williams, 35 years old, married for 7 years to John, who is about to turn 37. Following my father's passing 6 years ago, we relocated to a new home, where we've been cohabiting with my mother. The three of us together. John is caring, and he has built a harmonious relationship with my mother, creating a tranquil and satisfying home life for us. Nevertheless, my professional journey has been a roller coaster, bringing about significant stress. Initially, right after college, I joined my father's company, where he held the CEO position, as a way to find my footing. However, upon careful self-reflection regarding my skills and interests, I realized it wasn't the right fit for me, prompting a change in my career path. Although it was a challenging decision in the first year of my marriage, looking back now, I'm relieved I made the switch. I have 2 brothers, both of whom opted to work in our father's company. Considering my mother's presence there as well, it felt almost inevitable that I would follow suit eventually. Given the company's specialization in electrical engineering, I pursued and earned my degree in that field before joining my father's business. With my entire family employed in the same place, I never questioned that this was where my future belonged. The initial phase wasn't without its challenges. There were whispers about me getting the job solely because of my father, rumors that, while anticipated, were nonetheless hurtful. Once my colleagues learned of my familial connection to the CEO, a noticeable distance emerged, and I often felt excluded. Despite my diligent efforts, my hard work was consistently viewed through the lens of riding on my parents' coattails, leading to frustration. My brothers encountered similar talk, but managed to validate themselves through their skills. Determined not to lag behind, I toiled hard to debunk the misconceptions and gradually ascended the success ladder. Despite being the CEO's daughter, my boss, who assessed our work performance, didn't cut me any slack. In fact, it felt like he held me to an even higher standard than the average employee. This made it clear that my promotions were solely a result of my efforts, a recognition that brought me great satisfaction. However, the joy of this achievement was marred by allegations of favoritism, leaving me disheartened. No matter my accomplishments, they were consistently perceived as mere byproducts of riding on my parents' coattails, a source of deep frustration. 3 years into my tenure at the company, I met my husband. As our relationship blossomed, I found myself facing disdain from some female colleagues. He worked for a company that collaborated with my father's, earning admiration for his competence and amiable personality. His substantial income only added to his allure in the eyes of many. Our paths had crossed even before we encountered each other at work. I frequently spotted him at the bookstore and library I frequented, leading to casual conversations. The coincidence of meeting at work surprised both of us. Our shared love for reading quickly blossomed into a relationship, triggering jealousy and gossip among my coworkers. Throughout our relationship, I got acquainted with my husband's family, but my mother-in-law and sister-in-law harbored a dislike for me. Their snide remarks were a regular occurrence when my husband and father-in-law were out of earshot. Having a job is a breeze for you, thanks to your father. It must be delightful to live a life without challenges. They firmly believed that I sailed through life on the coattails of my parents' achievements, enjoying a generous salary solely because of their success. Yet my father would never hire someone lacking the necessary skills, even if it were his own child. While he is a family-oriented and kind-hearted individual, he maintains a strict separation between personal and business matters. In the professional realm, he never shows favoritism just because I'm his daughter. My employment was contingent on having the requisite skills. I hold deep respect for my father's capabilities as a CEO, and I find it disheartening when others unjustly criticize his judgment. However, when I express this sentiment, my mother-in-law remains unmoved. Similarly, my sister-in-law persistently takes digs at me for supposedly riding on coattails, displaying resentment toward the close relationship I share with my husband. How on earth did someone as unremarkable as you manage to tie the knot? What kind of tricks did you play? My sister-in-law, seemingly even more bothered by me, probably due to her fleeting relationships, can't fathom how I ended up happily married to my husband. My sister-in-law, always impeccably dressed in what appears to be high-end fashion, undoubtedly catches eyes. However, her sharp personality appears to be a stumbling block in sustaining lasting romances. Later, I discovered that my sister-in-law attended the same college as my brother and had once confessed her feelings to him, only to be rejected. During a family gathering, they recognized each other, and when I asked my brother about her, he shared this tale. As his sister, I could proudly attest that my brother is earnest, hardworking, considerate of others, and has a keen interest in fashion. Perhaps that's why he was quite popular with the ladies. Knowing that my brother was such a man, my sister-in-law appeared to channel her frustration from his rejection, intensifying her harsh attitude. In response, I consciously kept my distance during moments with just my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. Furthermore, whenever I visited my in-laws and shared tea, it carried an off taste, as if something had been added. Though not visually apparent, it seemed my mother-in-law was purposefully serving me unpleasant food as a form of harassment. Initially, I dismissed it as my imagination, but when I caught her smirking maliciously and mocking me for my inability to appreciate the taste, I realized it was intentional. Their demeanor consistently turned sour or mean whenever I presented a friendly face in front of others. Consequently, I learned to navigate around them to avoid their snide remarks. When it came to the food served at my in-laws, I politely consumed as little as possible to prevent being perceived as rude. As for whether I lived happily after marrying my husband, the answer is not quite. Despite a good relationship with my husband, marriage brought about an escalation in workplace gossip compared to our dating days. The negativity at work intensified, and coupled with the ongoing harassment and sarcasm from my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, I found myself gradually losing my spirit. While I found fulfillment in my work, the toxic environment made me question its acceptability. Contemplating my future became a recurring theme, especially when my father passed away and my brother assumed the role of CEO, sparking gossip about me being the CEO's sister. The shock of losing my father shattered my spirit, and I felt incapable of continuing at the company. Despite always envisioning a career at my father's company, I hadn't considered what type of job I might pursue next. Years of enduring gossip and sarcastic remarks had taken a toll on my self-esteem, reducing me to tears at the slightest provocation. Confused by my involuntary tears and unable to pinpoint the source of my sadness, I felt utterly lost. Witnessing my emotional state, my mother and husband expressed genuine concern and provided unwavering support. With their assistance, I gradually began to heal and sought guidance from my mother about charting a new path for the future. I've been contemplating trying a different job, but I don't think I possess any particular skills. Is there anything suitable for me? I expressed my thoughts, feeling a wave of despondency, convinced I had little to offer, as I asked my mother in a disheartened tone. To my surprise, she responded, "Karen, you've always had a passion for reading and writing stories, haven't you? I believe a job involving writing would be well suited for you." Her words triggered a recollection. It was true. I had always been an enthusiastic reader, excelled in liberal arts subjects during my school days, and actively participated in the literature club, where I found joy in writing novels and poems. The memories of those times filled me with a sense of happiness. I still cherished reading books to this day. Encouraged by my mother's insight, I began seriously considering a career in writing. Upon introspection, I acknowledged that a career in electrical engineering wasn't the right fit for me. My mother had consistently urged me to choose a job I loved since my student days. However, I failed to grasp it back then. It seemed my mother understood me better than I understood myself. With newfound clarity, I decided to embark on a fresh journey and set my sights on becoming a novelist, beginning my career in writing. Nonetheless, as a novice, finding work proved challenging, and I found myself depleting my savings every day while diligently facing my computer, immersed in writing. In the initial stages, my motivation stemmed from proving others wrong, but now my efforts are driven by a desire to fulfill my own aspirations. Despite the obstacles, I derive more satisfaction from the process. I invest more hours in crafting stories than I did during my tenure at a company, dedicating the majority of my day to the creative process. Over time, my income grew, reaching the point where, by the second year, I matched the salary of an average office worker. Though less than my previous earnings in the fourth year, one of my novels received an award and was published. This led to a contract with a publishing house, establishing a consistent flow of work. By the fifth year, a hit novel catapulted my earnings beyond my husband's substantial salary. Subsequently, my work transitioned into adaptations for comics and dramas, keeping me occupied while ensuring a steady income. The journey has been challenging, but as a novelist, I now realize that my previous occupations were not well suited for me. However fitting the role of a novelist may be for me, reaching this point wouldn't have been possible without the substantial support from my mother and husband. Regrettably, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, upon learning of my novelist endeavors, preemptively dismissed my chances of success and began making disparaging comments, insinuating that I was merely relying on my husband. The comments took a turn for the worse after my father-in-law's passing. Since I predominantly write from home, they took to labeling me as a nerd. Their jealousy intensified due to our residence in a high-rise luxury condo, making their remarks even more spiteful. "You're just idling at home, living off your husband's earnings, aren't you? Must be nice. Life's easy when you don't have to work for it." They presume my husband is solely responsible for our condo purchase and covers all our living expenses. Their conviction that I don't contribute financially is especially pronounced, particularly since I made a career switch to become a novelist. The condo, in reality, was an inheritance from my father, so my husband played no role in acquiring it. The impressive amenities within the building practically eliminate the need for me to venture outside, further fueling their misconception that I'm a recluse. However, I share the living costs with my husband, a fact I've clarified multiple times. Despite my explanations, they persist in believing that my husband covers all expenses. Their comments persist behind my husband's back, and I endure it, despite the stress it brings. On top of that, they make insensitive remarks about my decision not to have children, a topic that first emerged when I turned 30, and has since become tiresome. Now, at 35 and still childless, I find myself growing concerned. Two individuals have made me uncomfortable, dismissing my work explanations and opting instead for insults. In response, I discreetly sought advice from my mother and husband. During my time at the company, I refrained from seeking advice until I reached a breaking point. Learning from that experience, I made a conscious effort to communicate early on, particularly with my mother. Since the two individuals in question are part of my husband's family and maintain a facade of decency in front of him, I chose to convey things to him in the gentlest terms possible. "You don't need to handle those two. I'll take care of any meetings or communications with them." He was well aware of the challenging period I was going through. Recognizing my emotional instability due to backbiting, he made an effort to minimize my interactions with them, ensuring I didn't have to face them more than necessary. Thanks to him, the instances of enduring their snide remarks diminished. Yet there were moments when their malice still affected me. Nevertheless, the knowledge that I had allies in my mother and husband swiftly aided in my recovery. Regarding the matter of not being able to have children, my mother, who had me at an older age, reassured me that there was no rush. "It's simply not the right time yet. I had you later in my life, so there's no need to worry, don't you think? I won't stress about it too much, and I'll patiently wait. Conversations with my mother, considering my current workload and the negativity from those two, led me to believe that I couldn't afford to have children at the moment. Despite feeling a sense of urgency, I decided to minimize my concerns as much as possible. Though I continued to endure snide remarks from the two of them, my mental state was more stable than when I was employed at the company. The house my father bequeathed us was well designed and well located, providing a peaceful abode where I lived harmoniously with my mother and husband, experiencing genuine happiness. Additionally, the shared facilities offered gym equipment and a workspace, allowing me to exercise and take breaks during work, facilitating a smoother daily routine. However, one day, my energetically working mother suddenly collapsed and succumbed to a stroke. She had gone to work as usual, and I had bid her farewell with a smile. Without any chronic illnesses, I had presumed she would live much longer, making the news of her passing all the more shocking. Upon reaching the hospital, I gazed at her peaceful face, resembling someone who had just fallen asleep, with a sense of disbelief. Though it felt unreal as I organized her funeral, my emotions gradually settled, and I mourned quietly. I can't believe she's gone so suddenly. She was fine just this morning. My husband, familiar with my mother's lively morning routines, shared my disbelief and cried. Having a close and enduring relationship with her, he mourned alongside me. Despite our sorrow, we prepared for the wake and funeral, managing the reception as acquaintances came by to offer condolences. Witnessing the outpouring of love for my mother brought me solace during a difficult time. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law arrived, and perhaps because they were in the company of my husband, they maintained a somber demeanor. However, when my husband was occupied with others, they leaned in to whisper, "With your mother gone, it's going to be tough from here on out. And since we're family, we don't need condolence money, right? Don't worry, I won't give a dime to someone who's just a gold digger." Their insensitivity at such a time left me appalled. Not only were they stingy about the condolence money, but they also mocked me, claiming I had been too dependent on my mother for my age. While I felt anger towards them, I began to consider that directing my energy towards getting mad at them was futile. My husband, on the other hand, grew increasingly infuriated by their audacious behavior. "If you're planning to sell the family home, why wouldn't you discuss it with me? It's your decision, so if there's no house, that's not my problem." He categorically refused, and realizing they couldn't persuade him, they audaciously turned to me. "Hey, Karen, could you please talk to John about letting us stay? We won't ask you to leave, and it's fine if you live with us. If things remain as they are, we're out of options. Please convince him." After enduring their ridicule, their arrogance seemed insurmountable. It's my house, under my name, yet they carried themselves with an air of entitlement. Although I've always rejected the idea, the thought of living with them filled me with dread. Before I could sarcastically refuse, my husband erupted in anger again. "Enough is enough. After all the nonsense you've put Karen through, you've got some nerve. Just stop asking for a share of the home sale money and go back where you came from. I don't even want to see you two anymore." With that, he unambiguously declared dissownment. Despite their persistent attempts to latch onto my husband, we chose to ignore them. Settling the bill at the restaurant, we promptly departed. Nevertheless, they shamelessly showed up at our upscale condo on occasion, unrepentant. After explaining the situation to the building manager, they were warned. The manager made it clear that if they continued causing a disturbance, the police would be called. Undeterred, they still loitered around the front door, pressuring my husband to let them move in or provide financial assistance. When my husband, reaching his limit, threatened to involve the police, they finally ceased their visits. It seemed he was serious about severing ties, taking legal steps to disown them. However, their persistence took a new form as they inundated our phones with messages and emails, pleading to live with us and requesting money. The constant harassment reached a breaking point, prompting me to immediately block their numbers. It turned out their family home was difficult to sell for a substantial amount due to its age and inconvenient location. Counting on my husband without any savings of their own, they resorted to selling whatever they could and moved into a cheap, run-down apartment. Struggling to find stable employment, they now scrape by with multiple part-time gigs, leading a busy but challenging life. As for me, a wave of good news arrived once the relentless messages ceased. The joy of pregnancy lifted the worry I had about not being able to have kids. With this happy news, I finally felt a glimmer of hope after a prolonged period of difficulty. Determined to be the kind of mother my child can always feel safe with, akin to my own mother, I eagerly anticipate the arrival of my baby while continuing to dedicate myself to my work.